So Jeff's on the phone and it's getting close to count time. We're in prison in Portland, Oregon. I'm standing behind him. He was actually taking my phone time, but I said, go ahead, Jeff. I saw it. The CO is telling him, Jeff, off the phone, it's count time. MacDonald's going like this. Jeff, off the phone, he's going like this, yelling at his lawyer. Finally, in a rage, he smashes the phone down. I see this burning in his eyes, and he kind of looks up at the CO as if he wanted to just kill him. And he walks away. And you know what I said at that moment? Fatal vision. Another sit down with Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. And guess what? It's August already. The summer is kind of just flying by. A little better than last year when we were in the midst of the pandemic. Things seemed to slow down a bit last year, but picking up this year, for me, a lot of the speaking engagements that I had postponed last year are now starting to pick up. Of course, still a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, I don't know about all of you, but I just wish our elected officials would come out and say, you know what, we really don't know what's going on here. We're not certain about the vaccine. We're not certain about long-term effects of the vaccine. We really don't know what's going on with the masks, whether we should mandate them, we shouldn't mandate them. The problem is, I'm not anti-anything. I just wish we can get a clear path, some real knowledge from people that really know, and just tell us the real deal. We're adults. We can handle it, whatever it is. If we had to wear a mask and the science, provided for the fact that we should wear a mask, we wear a mask. What's the big deal? But if not, and there's been so much conflicting information, then just tell us that and let us make up our own minds. What really does trouble me is telling us that if we don't wear a mask or we don't get a vaccine, that the freedoms that we were granted by our Constitution are going to be taken away. That's not right. That's not what America is all about. We shouldn't be forced into doing that with the threat of our constitutional rights being taken away. We're not committing a crime. We're just choosing what goes in our own bodies. That's my position on it. It's not Democratic, it's not Republican. It's Michael Franzese's position. Like it, dislike it, that's how I feel. I believe some of you will go along with me, some of you won't, but hey, we're all entitled to our opinions. But again, just give us the right information, level with us, don't politicize this, and we'll all be a lot happier. Anyway, like I said, it's August already. The summer is flying by. Before you know it, it's going to be Labor Day. Hope all of you get as much of summer in as you possibly can. Thank you. We're well over 600,000 subscribers now in a year. We did that in record time. Thanks to all of you enjoying the content. We work hard to try to give you what you want to see. And my crew, 18,000 members, jump on. It's for free, won't cost you a penny. Inner Circle, we're approaching 1,000 people. It's not going to break the bank, but if you want more of me, more advice on leadership and business and life skills, jump aboard. We got great things planned. Love the Zoom calls, love answering the questions, love going into business with one or two of my Inner Circle people. All great, so jump on board. We'd love to have you. Today, I'm going to do something that's kind of disturbing. Actually, it's very disturbing. It's a very famous but a horrible case in American history. It's the case of Jeffrey MacDonald. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. There was a movie called Fatal Vision. It was a book written by Joe McGinnis that was turned into a movie. Disturbing book, disturbing film. Let me give you a little background. Jeffrey MacDonald was an Army captain. He was also a medical doctor. Back in 1970 in Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Jeffrey MacDonald was accused of murdering his pregnant wife and his two young daughters, and I believe Kristen and Nicole, I'm not sure their names. Anyway, they were 6 years old and 3 years old. Ordinarily, I wouldn't talk about something like this because I wasn't there. I don't know the facts of the case. I know what I read, but I can speak because I did jail time with Jeffrey MacDonald. I spent quite a bit of time with him in federal prison, both in Terminal Island, California, and then in Portland, Oregon. We had numerous conversations together. I observed Jeffrey on a daily basis. I saw him in the prison yard. I saw him on the telephone. I saw him in the visiting room. We spoke about his case. We walked the track. So based upon my knowledge and experience with Jeffrey, I think I can talk about the case. And again, it's very, very disturbing. I don't mean it for any other reason other than I think it's very interesting to learn about the psychology of Jeffrey MacDonald, because I think it not only applies to him, but applies to others who have been accused of some very serious and heinous crimes. And I want to make this clear. Jeffrey has maintained his innocence. He maintains it until today. I believe he's 78 years old. He was sentenced to 3 life sentences, one for first-degree murder against his wife, Colette, and the other 2, I believe, was second-degree murder against his 2 young daughters. Again, heinous, horrible crime, but he's maintained his innocence. And I had conversations with him. He's a very charismatic, endearing type of guy. You look at Jeffrey, good-looking guy. You don't ever want to believe that he can commit such a crime. And so I'm not going to comment on whether he's innocent or guilty as a matter of fact. I'm going to express my opinion and what my thoughts are, having spent the amount of time and observing him like I did. But I'm not going to, state factually, hey, he did it or he didn't do it. I can tell you this, it's probably one of the most litigated cases in the history of our country. He's been in front of the Supreme Court. There's been more appeals filed on this case than you can imagine. I believe he's gone to 1 or 2 parole hearings. I know he refused his first one. I think he might have gone to one recently, as a matter of fact. I'm not sure of that. I know he did have another parole hearing coming up. The reason he's in federal prison, because the crime was committed on federal property in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, while he was an Army captain. So that's why he's in federal prison for murder. Otherwise, he would be in a state prison. That's why I got to meet him. So I'm going to get into the background of the case a little bit. Like I said, it's disturbing. If some of you ladies, don't want to hear it, I understand that. But it is what it is. I would say if you want to learn more, you could buy the book, Fatal Vision, or you can see the movie that came out several years ago. I don't remember. It was a television movie, I know that. Anyway, here's kind of the facts of the case. 1970, Jeffrey MacDonald was a captain in the Army. He was also a medical doctor. One day, I believe in February, he had taken his 2 daughters, taken them out for the day. I think he took them horseback riding or pony riding, just a normal day. He comes home. His wife, Colette, wasn't home yet. I think he played with the kids. He was playing horsey with the kids or something like that. Watched a little television with them and then put them to bed. His wife came home a little bit later. I believe they watched television together. Maybe they had something to eat. Just a normal day, normal day in his life. Puts the kids to bed, spends some time with his wife, and then goes to sleep, as far as I know. Turns out that 3 o'clock in the morning, this horrible incident took place. And since I can't comment on what happened, obviously we weren't there, I'm going to tell you what the investigation turned up and what the facts of the case were. Later that morning, Jeffrey MacDonald called emergency on the fort, whatever the emergency number was, and asked for the police to come. And here's what they found. His wife, Colette, had been brutally beaten. I mean, stabbed multiple times, I think something like 30 times. Her throat was cut. She was bludgeoned to death. She was lying in her bed, just an absolute mess. And right above her bedpost said something about, kill the pigs or something like that, written allegedly in his wife's blood. He was lying on top of his wife. He had some, I believe, a puncture wound in his chest, and his shirt was pulled over his head. He was beat up a little bit. They went into the kids' room, again, brutally murdered, stabbed several times, throats. It was just terrible. It was just too hard to describe. I mean, I have children, we all have children, many of us do, and we can't even think of something like this. It was that horrible. The children were brutally murdered. And Jeffrey MacDonald's story, they took him to the hospital, and his story in relaying the incident were that some hippies, now remember, this is 1970, hippies, big word, It was the year of love and all that stuff. San Francisco, long hair, the Beatles, the whole bit. I remember that generation. And he claimed that some hippies came into the house and they did this heinous crime, and that he fought with them in a way, and he pulled his shirt up over his head. They stabbed him, knocked him out. Everybody else got killed somehow. He didn't get killed. Initially, the police, that investigated this at the fort, they believed his story. Who could believe that a husband and a father would do this to their family? It was just too terrible. They believed his story. And I'm going to run through this quick, but I would advise if you really want to, get interested in this, there's a ton of information about it everywhere. You can Google it, and I'm sure you'll get a lot. They started their investigation, and things just didn't add up. Initially, he went to trial, or it was a court-martial, I believe, the military way, and the case was dismissed against him. This went on for several years. What happened here is very interesting. Because of the way he came out of this, it didn't seem like he was in a lot of despair over this heinous crime. And initially, his in-laws, mother and father-in-law, believed him. They supported him. But they started to watch his behavior afterwards, and it started to bother Colette's father a lot. So he started to really look into the behavior and the character of Jeffrey MacDonald. And it seemed that in a narcissistic way, he was almost seeking the attention that he would get as being a survivor and talking about this. Interestingly enough, as you go through this, the thought on him is that he was a very narcissistic guy and that he erased from his mind, he actually did perpetrate the crime. The evidence that was gathered afterwards in different proceedings were very convincing because later on, after the father-in-law did a thorough investigation, he was relentless, and he finally got a court outside the military to investigate the case, to take it to a grand jury, and to eventually indict Jeffrey MacDonald for the 3 murders. And he did it again because he was just really upset about the behavior that Jeffrey MacDonald had. I want to stop here for a second. I know O.J. Simpson. We met once or twice. We had the same agent, ICM. Jack Gilardi represented both of us. So I've met him a couple of times. But his daughters danced with my daughters. We lived in that area in California, Brentwood. And they were in the same dance team together. My wife knew his wife. I think everybody just about on the planet believes that O.J. Simpson got away with murder. Again, I'm not going to comment on it. If you ask me my opinion, yeah, I think he got away with murder. What I had said afterwards, O.J. knows what happened there that night. If, in fact, he did commit the murder, if you are fortunate enough to beat a murder case that would have put you in prison for the rest of your life or possibly give you the death sentence, what do? You disappear. Disappear. Let everybody forget your name. Run away. Go live happily ever after. He had a few bucks. Disappear. O.J. couldn't do that. He stayed in the media. As a result, Vegas, got a 33-year prison sentence, did a number of years. Maybe now he's calming down. I think the same thing happened in Jeffrey MacDonald's case. Couldn't stay out of the media. Why would you want attention brought on you after such a brutal, brutal murder of your wife and your 2 children? First of all, I don't know how I would survive after that. I would either be in a nut house. I don't know what I would do if something like that happened in my family. And I think most of you can relate to that too. What would you do if somebody else actually perpetrated the crime? But if you have a narcissistic nature and you have erased the thought of this heinous crime and say, I'd do something like this, I don't know. Then maybe you're capable of getting in front of the media. I think within 1 year, he was dating another woman. 22-year-old girl, a lot younger than him. I think he admitted on the stand that he, had had a couple of affairs during his marriage. I'm not commenting on that. I'm just saying, so this could have been part of the problem that he had with his wife. I don't know. After a thorough investigation, pursued relentlessly by his mother-in-law and father-in-law, who initially supported him and then turned against him because of his post-crime behavior, brought this to a trial. He gets convicted, and he gets sentenced to 3 life sentences. That's how he ends up in jail. The sentence was appealed. It was overturned. He got out again. I mean, this was I'm talking about years from the time that it was dismissed in the military till the time he went to trial. I believe it was 9 years. He was out during that time. And his behavior during that time wasn't one of remorse. People noticed that. He didn't hide. He didn't go away. He wasn't destroyed mentally and emotionally over such a heinous crime. He was out there. He was doing news media interviews. Bothered a lot of people, especially his in-laws. Anyway, he gets convicted. He appeals. It gets overturned on an appeal. The government appeals it. The conviction is reinstated. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Gets reinstated. So now he's doing 3 life sentences. Cut to, I happened to meet him, 1985. '86, I end up in Terminal Island, California. That was the prison there, medium security prison. Jeffrey was there. I observed him. I wouldn't say we became friends in there. You know, you got to be careful who you say your friends are in prison. But, you know, again, charismatic guy. I had a little bit of stature in prison at that point, so we met up. We used to talk, and I observed him. Had a lot of visits. He was always on the telephone, always talking about his case, always maintaining his innocence, always fighting for his freedom. I don't know how many appeals this guy filed. Like I said, one of the most heavily litigated cases in the history of our country, of our court system. And we would talk, and he would explain some of the facts. And he said, Michael, the government suppressed evidence. And, you know, there was a woman that came into the house with long hair, blonde hair, and she admitted to the murder. She admitted she was on acid. Well, she had conflicting stories. She admitted it to it once. She denied it again. It was back and forth, back and forth. You know, she kept changing her story. Allegedly, there was other 3 people, I think, that came with her, 3 other guys. The investigation showed up no sign of 4 other people coming into that house at all. All the evidence pointed to Jeffrey's guilt. Still, I listened to him. And I said, you know what, who am I? I give the benefit of the doubt to anyone. And if you listen to Jeffrey, you kind of believe that. I'll tell you a couple of funny stories. He had lost a couple of appeals. We both got shipped out to Portland, Oregon for some reason. It was a brand new prison there. It was only open like 6 weeks. It was great because the guards didn't even know how to be guards yet. It was so nice. It was unbelievable. Anyway, the prison was so new that in the prison yard, I don't know if you know this, they put wire on the top of the prison yard so that a helicopter can't come in and facilitate an escape to an inmate. And there's normally wire there so no helicopter can drop down on the yard. Well, this prison was so new, they hadn't put the wire in yet, right? We were walking around the track one day, me and Jeffrey, and he was talking about his case. And like I said, I listened because he was a convincing guy. And he's talking about his case, and I knew he had lost a bunch of appeals already. I think this was, you know, I don't know, 89, 90, somewhere around there, I don't remember. We're walking around and around and around, and I'm listening. And you know, it's funny because the prison in Oregon is kind of nestled in between some mountains or hills. And as we're walking, Jeffrey says to me, Michael, come on, you have experience. I know you know the law, your father's case, you've been to trial 5 times, you know the law. And I did, you know, I understood the law back then. And he says, what do you think? You think I got a shot at this? And I said, Jeffrey, you want my honest opinion? And he said, yeah, of course. I said, okay. I said, you see those mountains over there? I pointed to the mountains in the distance, and he said, yeah. I said, let me give you my advice. I said, you notice there's no wire here, right? Prison is new. Maybe they forgot. Who knows? Ran out of money. Feds. I said, your best bet of getting out of here, forget the appeal. Get somebody to get in a helicopter, come here, land in the prison yard, jump in that helicopter, and get the hell out of America. I said, because that's the only shot you got, brother. I said, I know you well enough to talk like that. You know, you're not going anywhere. You're not winning any appeals. First of all, the case is getting old. Not going to happen. He looked at me and you really feel that? I kind of got mad, you know. And you know, I saw that kind of glint in his eyes because what had to happen that night, this guy had to crack. He had to kill his wife and his 2 baby daughters in such a brutal fashion. He had to just crack. Something inside of him just went crazy. You can't do that if you're in a normal state of mind. He never claimed that he was temporarily insane. Might have been a better, you know, defense. But again, he convinced himself that this never happened. But I saw that glint in his eyes. He got angry with me. And I said, Jeffrey, calm down. He's talking to me. You asked for the truth, you got it. I said, don't get upset. I'm not the court. I'm not making this decision. I'm just saying, I don't think you got a shot. Not from what you have told me, both in Terminal Island and here. I don't think you got a shot, brother. That's my opinion. And he kind of, you know, okay, Mike, okay, kind of walked off. Another time, that was the first time I said, maybe there's something to it. Again, I'm not the judge of the jury here, and I wasn't there. Another time, we're on the telephones. Now, I got to tell you something. In prison, one of the hottest spots in all of prison are the telephones. You don't disrespect people on the phone. If you got 5 minutes and there's a line behind you, you better take your 5 minutes, not cut into somebody else's time who's waiting to get on with their lawyer, their loved one, or whatever the conversation is going to be. I saw more incidents happen because people disrespected one another on the phone. I'll tell you how it was. I wanted more phone time. I used to pay people. I say, hey, if you got nobody to call, if you're just jerking around on the phone, here, take some money, go buy some commissary, let me have your phone time. Because that's how I got it. But that was respectful. You do it that way. You don't disrespect people in prison. A lot of times, they don't care who you are. Somebody comes up behind you, hits with a mop wringer like I saw, and splits your head open. Not mine, somebody else, I witnessed that. You don't know where it came from. You don't disrespect people in prison unless they do it first, and then you got to show who you are. Other than that, you don't do that. Please, thank you, excuse me. Remember those 3 words, long way in prison. Another time, we're on the phone, and he was talking to his lawyer. I was behind him. Heated conversation. Now, honestly, he kept looking at me, Mike. He said, okay. I said, go ahead, Jeff. Go. Don't worry about it. I knew, look, when you're in there and your lawyer's driving you crazy, sometimes, you just need those extra few minutes. And I said, Jeff, go ahead. Don't worry about it. I'll wait till later. So he kept going late. I said, go ahead. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Well, now we're getting to count time. They have a number of counts in prison. The 4 o'clock count is the big one. That's the one that goes to Washington, D.C. And that's nationwide on all the prisons. 4 o'clock, the count goes to D.C. They don't take any nonsense. You got to be in your cell. So we're approaching the count. The phones are going to go off. And the guard is telling Jeff, hey, Jeff, you got to go. And he's going like this, okay, okay. Jeff, you got to go. Okay, and he's back on that heated conversation. And the guard now is getting adamant with him. Jeff, you got to hang up. And I see him turn to that guard with his face got red. He grabbed that phone and boom, slammed it down. And I said, okay. If it happened, that's what happened. The demon took over in that guy that night. And I saw it. He stormed off, went into his cell. You just saw it. The guy cracked. Once again, I'm not saying he's guilty. I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't give my opinion. I can only tell you this. I saw something in the guy. I really did. That maybe he was capable of doing something like that. I still don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe it. It was such a horrible crime. I don't want to believe it. But I saw something in there that, maybe this is what happened. I'll tell you another thing he did, And again, if he did commit this crime and he can't get himself to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I really did it. He kept pursuing his innocence. He gets in touch with a guy, I think his name was Joe McGinnis. He wants to write a book. And he sits down with Joe, and Joe says, okay, I'll write the book. And Jeffrey is being interviewed by him, telling him all the facts from his perspective and why he was framed and why he didn't do it and giving him all the evidence. Well, Joe McGinnis does an investigation on his own, talks to everybody involved. Jeffrey should know a reporter's going to do this. I don't know what he was thinking. And writes a real hatchet job on Jeffrey MacDonald, because in his investigation, his opinion, Jeffrey was guilty. That's the book Fatal Vision, which turned into the movie Fatal Vision, buried him even more. So now Jeffrey is going to sue the guy. I mean, it just never ends. The point is, again, if he committed this crime and he got away with it in a military level, and he had 9 years on the street, how do you look at your mother-in-law and father-in-law? How do you date another girl? How do you go on the news media and kind of making yourself out to be a victim and almost boasting about it? And I saw some of the coverage, so I can say it in that way. He just didn't act right afterwards. It was behavior that got him. I want to tell you this. My dad was a wise guy. A wise guy, not only a wise guy, but a wise man, how should I say it? And he told me something once. He said, son, I want to tell you something. He said, you're in this life now. He said, I've been schooling you, educating as best you can. He said, I want to tell you something that's going to be critical throughout your life. So what's up, Pop? He said, if you and me right now went out and committed a crime, no matter what it was, serious, lightweight, whatever it was, he said, 30 seconds after you ask me about the crime, I'm going to look at you and say, what are you talking about? There's no reason to discuss it ever again. Tremendous advice my dad gave me. Okay? No reason to discuss it. You did something, that's it. Because you can get yourself in trouble. If Jeffrey did commit his crime, again, not passing judgment on him, What he should have done? Disappear. Got away with murder. Heinous, horrible murder. Why would you even allow people to think that in any way you're glamorizing yourself or profiting in any way off of it? I can't understand that. And to get your in-laws who supported you to start to question you. They loved him. They supported him. To start to question him to the point where, hey, that's their daughter and their grandchildren. You just happen to have the wrong in-laws. They weren't going to let this thing go. And they pushed. And you know what? I don't believe they wanted to see him convicted if he was innocent. I believe they wanted justice for the crime. And they were relentless. And look what happened. 3 life sentences. You know, Jeffrey recently said, I heard, he said, listen, if I was asked to, and by the way, and this is not a show of guilt, because we're not forced to take a polygraph test in this country. We're not. As a matter of fact, results of a polygraph test are not admissible in court in this country. However, if you're innocent and you want to take a test, you can brag about it outside. Hey, I passed a polygraph test. Well, he was asked to take one a couple of times and he refused. Now, again, that's not an indictment and that's not an admission of guilt because you don't have to take one. But, you know, people make decisions based upon responses like that. So he recently said, getting back to what I was saying, he recently said, you know, if I was asked to stand up in front of the world and admit to those killings, admit to those murders, he said, I'd rather spend the rest of my life in prison than admit to those murders. Well, Jeffrey, you're spending the rest of your life in prison anyway. You know that. Was it sincere? I don't know. Was it narcissistic? I don't know. It's up for you to decide. Look at the case. You know, to me, it's bothersome and troublesome to even think about it, knowing him. But what's the moral of the story here, people? Look, got a lot of crazy people in this world. Got a lot of imbalanced people in this world. Maybe Jeffrey was one of them. Maybe OJ. I mean, what caused OJ if he was guilty? It was a heinous crime. I mean, he brutally butchered his wife. We were upset. As a matter of fact, my wife was there in the restaurant. It was a day of a dance competition. They were all together that day. I don't remember seeing her, but my wife definitely, and the kids definitely. That night is when it happened. I mean, we couldn't even fathom. She was a nice woman. We couldn't even fathom somebody brutally murdering somebody like that. I mean, this is brutal. Look, I spent 25 years on the street, people, and I saw my share of stuff. I was no saint. I was no angel. I was in that life. You know that. But I can't even imagine, you know, a crime so brutal against a woman and children. And I want to mention that there was a young man, you know, along with OJ's wife at that time, an innocent guy. He worked in the restaurant, just came by. He was brutalized. What causes somebody to snap like that? Because you have to snap. OJ wasn't a killer prior to that. He was a football player. He was an actor. He's a good guy, good personality, you know, charismatic guy. What causes somebody to snap like that? What causes a Jeffrey MacDonald, if he was guilty, to snap like that? Got to be careful with people. But, I can tell you this, you know, and I'm not suggesting that any of us have somebody like that around us. But I'm just saying human nature sometimes can be very deceiving. It really can be. I'm going to leave you with this with respect to this matter in Jeffrey MacDonald. You know, people, humility is a tremendous characteristic. I am greatly inspired and encouraged by people that I know have prominence and power in their life, people that have money, people that are smart and educated and yet are so humble. It means a lot to me. I look up to people like that. Whatever age, whether they're young or old, you know, you could always look up to somebody that has genuine, solid characteristics. I don't know what happened with Jeffrey, but I can say this. If for some reason he had done something like that, go away, disappear, go make amends with your God for whatever reason, because like I said, something in him had a snap. But don't get out there and try to make yourself a hero over this. I'm sure that most of us can't even understand what happened there. Anyway, very, very sad story. I know he's still in federal prison. I don't know where he is in the country now. I think he's on the East Coast, but it's a horrible case, very, very sad situation. And just, what are you going to do? That's life. Life sometimes is a mystery. We don't know why people do what they do. It's a mystery, and in this case, a real tragedy. So that's it for today. We'll be back to you shortly. We've got a lot of good things coming up, a lot of interviews, a lot more stories, a lot of Mob Movie Mondays. So stay tuned. And again, michaelfranzese.com. Jump on. We got a lot of great things coming up. Thank you for all of you in my crew, in my inner circle, and thank all of you for coming on and viewing the YouTube channel. We appreciate it. We know you have a lot of other choices on YouTube. Thank you very much for tuning into mine. So how do I always leave you? Same way. Be safe, be healthy, God bless, and God willing, I will see you next time.